Welcome to The Truth in This Art, your source for conversations at the intersection of arts, culture, and community. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today I am excited to introduce my next guest. She is a model, a stylist, and a mental health advocate whose work combines creativity, fashion, and wellness. With a passion for using fashion as a safe space and sharing styling ideas that inspire, she's dedicated to promoting mental health and well-being in innovative ways. Please welcome Rahel Negasi. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Rahel. I am a mental advocate during the day and on the weekends, a part-time model. And so my love of both, mental health and, fashion, I've found, creative ways to just, express myself through both avenues. And yeah, I'm excited to talk more about it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to go a little further into it. And the sort of second part to the questions, I'd like to go back. Can you share an early memory related to fashion or creativity that, left a mark on you? You think back, I think a lot of times we have these moments maybe from childhood or even like later where just like, okay, that's a good fit. I'm going to see if I can wear that, or they style that really cool together. But what's something that comes to mind for you as it relates to fashion or creativity?
So my earliest memory when it comes to fashion, I've looked back at, old baby pictures, and I've always, been very, very good about styling myself and, accessorizing and all that. But in terms of, when it all came together and it really inspired like a true passion to pursue a job or career through it, my cousin actually, I give her the credit for that. My older cousin, she used to model back in the day. And I've seen her like in shows, and I used to watch her get ready. And she's very, very probably one of my, biggest like inspirations when it comes to just like style and beauty and, taking care of yourself, as a woman. And so, when I saw her doing shows more often, I thought, hey, I could do that too. So that's really what got me into fashion industry.
Nice. That's really cool having sort of that reference point, that inspiration right in front of you, that familial connection. No, that's really cool. Like, I don't have any fashion. I put on just whatever's clean. It's like, oh, that's clean. I could just put that on. It's like, that's the wrong color. That does not compliment you, my guy. Or you're wearing that? You sure? And I think part of it comes from like, I'm a tall person or have you, and everyone in my family is like short. So I have no reference point at times. So it's like, I don't have like a style reference like right in front of me. I kind of just, all right, this guy's wearing that, I'm going to do that. Or when I was younger, it would be, and this is going to sound bad, but it would be like, oh, what are rappers wearing? I'm just going to put that
on. Yeah. And I think that's, kind of a go-to, especially as, when you're younger and you're more, impressionable. It's like, oh yeah, whatever my favorite celebrity is wearing, that looks good on them. That'll work for me too. But I think that's the great thing about, fashion and personal style in general. It's constantly evolving and changing, and what you wore back then, it's probably completely different than what you wear now. So there's always room for growth.
Yeah, the sizes have gotten smaller. The pants are less baggy.
Yeah.
Not wearing the bows. And it's funny. I just bought something really, really expensive for me at least. And it's this hat Mahershala Ali wore at the Academy Awards a couple of years ago. And I was just like, I'm gonna freak this. This is gonna look tight. And I just felt like it was a certain energy that I had in putting that on. I was just like, okay, this was cool. I chose this. It was slightly influenced, but it was sort of a vibe that I was going for, I guess. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about sort of those relationships with clothes and sort of the feelings that are attached at times. But yeah, I felt like sort of this maturation in what I'm choosing to wear. It's there. I feel like an adult now. So thank you.
Mm. Hmm.
So and this is like the second. This is funny. This is the second interview that I've done this week where I saw you in person and I became aware of you in the event I saw you at, and then I reached out and you said, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." So I saw you at this year's Fantasy Machine show, and it was a really dope. You have a presence, and you had to walk. I don't know what compliments to give models, but you had a presence out there. Could you share what that experience was like, and also maybe talk about one of your earlier experiences modeling and like being on they call it a catwalk, right? Being on the so talk a bit about that experience and maybe one of your earlier experiences and sort of that maturation and that process.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, I hope you enjoyed the show. It was definitely, a wonderful experience. And the way I was introduced to that event was through one of the designers who I met casually, a couple months back. And she happened to post on her story that she was looking for models. And I always love to look through, what their style is, what kind of clothes they have and that they make, and to see if it resonates with me, something I want to represent. And she's, her line of clothing is, all crochet. And I love, that's one of my favorite style designs. So, I reached out to her and, she told me to come on down to the show. And that was, it took off from there. But it was amazing. I mean, everybody backstage was, really cool to talk to, easy to talk to. And, it's a great place to like network, with creatives because, you see so many different styles. And yeah, I loved it though, and I even loved the venue that they used too. So it was really cool.
And big shout out to
Um,
Current Space.
yeah, it was my first time at that venue as well. It's like, I love the fact that they turned it into a whole, they had that catwalk built in one side and then there's a bar on the other side. So it was really like nice to have that balance of both forms of entertainment. So, but in terms of like my first time on the catwalk, I was in high school, and a couple of friends and we started our own fashion club. And so it's just, me and a bunch of girls who were interested and obsessed with clothes. And we decided, why not? Like, and so we started this club. And, our goal was by the end of the year to put on a show for the entire school. And a lot of the clothes, were it was a combination of both, us bringing our personal clothes from our closet, our favorite pieces, in addition to getting some pieces donated from local designers. So all the parents, all our fellow classmates showed up, for the show. And, not going to lie, the catwalk was a little shaky. It was built by high schoolers, so we didn't, can't really expect much. But it was so much fun just to be able to see everybody, show off their, personal style. And, it's not just the clothes, like how each person walks. It's really giving about their personality type. Some people are a little more reserved and have more of an elegant walk, and some people are very fun, flirty, and have more flair. So it was really fun.
That's tight. And I have a second part to this question.
Hmm.
But again, I'm tall, right? Like I'm 6'4", and I thought about it. I thought about it. I was going through at one point and collecting side missions and doing this podcast. I had a coffee named after me. I got a cocktail named after me. I have a few of these other things. I'm like, and I've always played with this idea. I had to shave my head, but this idea of doing at least one model thing and then retire. Like I did my one walk and I'm done now. And I see this. It was something, I forget which. It was one of the big like fashion houses, what have you. But it was a bunch of actors, and they all have played villains in movies. And I'm like, that's my inspiration right there. They are all in villain wear. The brooches are out. There is crushed velvet. There are blazers. Everyone looks tight, but that energy of you played this type of villain, and then your walk and your mannerisms and all of that stuff reflecting the villain that you play. Now they're all actors, but it definitely comes off. And the other thing, as I was touching on, like you absolutely had a presence that was out there. I was like, you are running the stage right now. You're running this sort of situation. And I don't know, I guess it's something about it. And as a person who I've not been on a stage a lot, once I'm, I guess, moving towards that, having that opportunity to be on there more often, I get more comfortable with it. So I don't know, just the villain thing. And then, hearing your sort of like early experience and the more recent experience, it's something that is definitely a component of, if I suppose if you go out there with like the positive energy you were touching on, behind the scenes, everything was really cool. Everything was like tight. People were nice. I can imagine if it was chaos back there, that was showing some folks' face and some, that as far as the performance aspect of being out there on the catwalk. If you will, in the second part of this question, how has modeling, how is like going out there, putting yourself out there? Because, I want to have eyes away from me, not on me. How has that like sort of shaped your perspective around like mental health and sort of that advocacy work, that sort of dual identity that you have?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I, naturally I'm a very shy person, so I can understand, the feeling of, not wanting any attention on you. That's, 100%, how I grew up as a very shy, reserved person. But there's something about, and that's one of the reasons, I kept, doing shows, was to really push myself to get out of that, out of my comfort zone. And the more I ended up doing that, my confidence grew, self-esteem, and, my sense of style, everything just, improved. And that, touches on to, mental health as well. I feel as though, I, like a lot of people, struggled with, anxiety, or just, a lot of like personal struggles that, we encounter, we feel, we face every day. And I feel like modeling was very much an outlet for me to escape those, struggles, and really just gave me this platform where, I could just be me and be celebrated for it, and it really, like I said, and you meet other people who experience, what you're going through as well. And you develop a bond with other people that also, brings, boost your mental health as well.
Yeah. It's one of those things of like having folks that get it, like I think in doing this, and I'm in the sort of journalist bent, and I talk to other podcasters, we can commiserate and share sort of what that experience is, and sort of the cycle of rejection that a lot of artists encounter as well. Of, man, I thought this was a really cool conversation. Oh, 2 downloads. All right, cool. And that's an impact because you're putting your time in it, and you're bringing folks in there, such as yourself. I think when folks are doing interviews and they're putting forth like an effort, whatever their creative outlet is, let's not purely put it towards podcasting, but when you're putting forth that effort, there is sort of an impact. It's especially if it relates to your identity. You feel like I'm not accepted, or I did a bad job, or whatever. And being able to connect with someone who kind of can understand it and get it, you can trade off like, nah, this is how I look at it. And it's like, oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. And it sort of helps. Like, I've been doing podcasting for 16 years, right? And when I guess I'm a dinosaur in the industry. So when I talk to folks who are just starting, and they sort of maybe ask those more challenging questions of, how do I make money from this? And it's like, that's the last thing you should be worried about, because if you start equating money to maybe why you're doing something, you're going to put a dollar amount on sort of maybe your sanity or how you approach something creative. And that's just a slippery slope. So being able to share that and have it based in sort of experience, kind of matters. And I think the same thing applies in any creative thing. Like, when someone is out there, I think modeling, as you touched on, being shy or, being observed, it's just like, oh, okay, I wonder if did they notice that? Did I, am I wearing this properly? Oh, this kind of fell off a little bit. And, the performance aspect of being in front of many people can be very like scary and stress inducing.
Yeah, it definitely can be. And, I've been backstage with, younger models who, were just starting out, might have been their first show versus for me is like my 10th show. And, uh, those moments kind of, ground me because it reminds me of my first time, those same feelings. No one starts out on the catwalk 100%, sure of themselves because you're trying to build up the experience that will give you that confidence. So, for me, it was just a matter of, and if I was to give my, advice to my younger self or somebody who's, nervous about being on the catwalk for the first time, I would definitely just say, practice, practice, practice as much as you can, and just, don't don't compare yourself to other models, right? Each person, has their own individual walk that's going to be unique to you. And you have to find that. If you try to copy somebody else's, it's going to come off as inauthentic, right? So the more real you are and the more you practice it, the less and less those nerves get to you. And I mean, there are still times where I still get nervous, when I go out on, on the runway, but I've gotten real good at hiding it. So it's just a matter of too, like the clothes. This is why I say like I pay attention to, the type of clothes the designer makes, because if it's something that really resonates with me and my style, I get excited. There's that natural excitement to just want to go out there and show it off, right? And you're motivated to make the designer proud, and it's there's a lot of emotions that go into it. But I genuinely feel like once you really get into it, the nerves kind of wash away, and it almost just becomes like second nature to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was having this conversation before you and I got started, where it's almost like with something that's new. I'm at a stage now when I think initially when something that's new, I screw up on it, right? Or I'm not doing it because it's new. But once I have a few reps under my belt, it's like, oh, that's old news. I got this. But I'll be remiss if I didn't ask you this. So there's two questions. These are not, I did not give these to you. So these are going to be interesting. If you will, what's one, it's almost like a rapid fire question. What's one word that you would use to describe that walk of yours? I put you in a spot right there because
yeah, you did.
it's like I said, you got a presence.
Right. I would just say elegance. And let me rephrase that without it sounding like a question. Elegance. And the reason why I say that is there are different types of walks, different types of model walks. And, of course, depending on the outfit you're wearing, you might want, something more fast paced, more slow. I tend to gravitate towards a slower walk that really exaggerates, my height and the clothes. And I keep it real slow too, because I really want people to feel like get a feel, and not miss anything. Right. So
You are, it's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be seen here. Put your
right.
timer on, put your timer on. You got it.
Yeah.
And the other sort of quick one that I have for you, and this might be a little easier, but you did great. You did great on that one. Um, when you see and you referenced sort of the designer for Fantasy Machine that you worked with, when you see a style that ultimately you think I would look good in there if this matches, what are you looking for? Like, what are the qualities that you look for in someone's work that you're like, okay, if they reach out, I would be absolutely interested, or hey, I'm going to reach out. Can I put your stuff on? Can I wear your fits?
Yeah. I definitely make sure, first and foremost, are these clothes that would actually fit me? Because I am, considered on the more, curvier side. Uh, and there are, of course, there are some design lines that don't really take that into account. So I really try to, represent clothing brands that I see that, really not even, make sure that their sizing is diverse, but that they really want to accentuate those curves, celebrate, different body types, because I mean, the industry has changed, there's no more one size fits all. So that's one of the things I look for. Also, just the level of creativity. I feel like I want to be excited, right? Not just as a model, but just even as a consumer. Like, is this something that, if I wasn't modeling for them, would I wear this in my personal day to day life?
Sure.
And if I can say yes to that with, 100% certainty, then that is another motivator for me to want to work with a certain designer.
Thank you. That's great. That is, I love the creativity piece. I love the what I wear this outside of. This is sort of a gig. This is an opportunity, and it's like, yeah, no, this is great. There are places in there as a person who I've gone to a few different things. I sit in the front row, sit there like I'm a celebrity. There's a podcast that I did. I will send it to you after this, where I was interviewing the designer, and I was like, you probably noticed me. I was in the front row with the ashy ankles, and and she's like, I do remember you. I was like, you remember the legs, don't you? She was like, yeah, you should have put on some lotion. I was like, thank you. Thank you for saying all of that. But I felt like this is one of those moments where, I threw on like a really oversized shirt, and I had like the shortest shorts I've ever worn on. And I was just like trying to present a vibe. But in it, like I said, I'm tall or what have you. And I'm like looking, I'm like, all right, I'm not really seeing anything that inspires me. If I were to really try to pop out and show something, you know what I mean? Could I wear that and so on? So I have to look at it from a different perspective of, do I appreciate the creative merit that went into any of these looks? And that's the thing. I have to do that shift. So when I think of, I've gone to two fantasy machine shows, and I look for that sort of avant-garde stuff, coming from a novice's position. I don't know anything about fashion. I got a band t-shirt on right now. But when I look at something from a creative standpoint or the sort of degree of difficulty, I'm like, yeah, there was some work there, or this person is a nerd. This is great. And I look for sort of that stuff. So I love that part where you mentioned sort of the creative, like sort of sensibility that's there.
Yeah. And honestly, I will say that oftentimes, if I get the chance to, observe the show, it's really not even, I take it a step further, and maybe it might not be something I wear, but can I, like you said, just appreciate, the level of effort and work that went into this piece? Because I don't know if you remember, but there was one designer that had crocheted an entire chair.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I just remember backstage, I could not stop looking at it, because it was like, what, what even inspires somebody to do something like that? I don't know what, but I'm glad it did, because it looked so amazing. And obviously that's not something that, you would wear day to day, but oftentimes you can look at a fashion show the same way you would look at an art gallery, right? Where you go to admire pieces, and you might not take one home with you, but it's just something about, being in the presence of, that level of creativity that just, brings enjoyment.
You get it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to, and I think we're touching on it a little bit here. Now, could you talk about how sort of the dual identities, as previously touched on, sort of the modeling side, and that's actually three, because there's a stylist side as well. There's three different important. We're going to touch on the stylist part, but sort of the fashion side of things and the mental health advocacy side of things. And I think you were touching on it a bit, but could you like really share how one maybe serves the other, like, sort of being aware of, how can I put it? Like, I do these podcasts, and there are more and more ads, right, that pop in there of like, get better help. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the type of wellness, mental health that I want to engage in. I'd rather, talk with a person. And this comes from a person who I saw a therapist for like 3 years, and I, kind of built up some of those skills and so on. And so it makes me a little bit more equipped when I'm doing this. And as I touched on, deal with the sort of cycle of rejection and the hits that happen and just the sort of day to day. I think I'm a relatively even keeled individual, but that comes from sort of work that, mentioned. So for you, could you speak on sort of how, like, one, the awareness around one's mental health? Because that's an assumption that people are like, yeah, I know about my, no, you don't, but could you speak on sort of that intersection there, like, how they kind of work in tandem?
Yeah, I mean, that's really important, to make that distinction. Awareness, for one, is not something that comes naturally. It's a skill set that you really have to build and, be mindful of. And and speaking from personal experience, working both backstage and, my day job, I do see intersections in terms of just in general, like witnessing, the struggles, like the stress, that can come with, either being on the runway or, in my day job, I work with, kids. So it's, confidence, issues with confidence and, self-esteem, especially for, the younger girls. That's really where, my passion, my heart goes out because, for someone who's been in that same stage, and, it's not to say that I don't still have my days where I, feel insecure, but knowing how to deal with those feelings, understanding that those feelings are temporary and that they pass and they're not a true reflection of your reality. That's a part of the self-awareness, right? And that's something that I do my best to either, model it in my own life or, teach others that skill as well. So, especially for, my students, I I always encourage them, because some of them, have found out that, yeah, I model on the side, and they're just like, wow, they're in awe, right? And some of them are not surprised because they're like, yeah, you have all that height, why not? And I'm like, yeah, well, I didn't always, of course, modeling sounds so glamorous, but I always try to paint, a picture of reality for them. I say, if you're interested in getting into the field, not just modeling, but just any, creative field, I always suggest that, you take time to really get to know yourself,
Sure.
get to know what your values are, what your interests are, because it's so easy to, once you get into these jobs or, once you get into these industries, that it's easy to be influenced and swayed by other people, right? And that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to, take in other people's opinions, but how you let it affect you and, how you move forward, that's really where the mindfulness and awareness comes in, right? So if you have a better sense of yourself and you're grounded in that, then it makes it, I feel like number one, people will admire you for it and they'll respect you a little more. But also too, it's just like the authenticity that comes with it. I mean, you really learn to embrace yourself. And again, people will take notice. The right people will, right? And that's why I always, and now, like I said, I'm very picky about, who I work with because I know that there are people who will embrace me and, my size, and there are others who don't. And that's why I always maintain that I go where I'm wanted and where I'm valued.
I love that. And yeah, in the last year, I've done the education thing as well. I don't really talk about it too much on here, but one segment was I had high school students I was working with, and I'm like, I am not qualified to give advice, but finding that you have this sort of shorthand. I'm black dude or what have you, and I do something in this lane that they're interested in, and you know kind of having an understanding of some of the challenges that the students engage in. And I had, one student in there in my class that I thought was just, it's just senioritis. It's like, yo, I'm trying to get out of here. You just talking, bro. Can you? And she would always have her headphones on. And I got sort of the message from our division lead, or department lead rather, that, she's had some things, going on and, sort of in her life, and she's not listening to. It's just more of a mechanism to help her cope. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's good to know that. It's good to have that context because I didn't know anything going in. And, I would always find a way to, I use humor as my way. So I was trying to find a way to crack her. And I remember at one point we were talking and we were doing these sort of impromptu podcasts, and she was always like trying to opt out of each one. And I was like, well, you weren't here in the last class. I guess you got to work with me. She's like, oh man. And we ended up doing a podcast together, and I got her to open up, and I could see like the face change. And she was like, I'm trying to be an actor. I want to do this. And I was like, what movies are you going to be in? She's like, I'm in all the Marvel movies. This is where they messed up on them. And I'm like, this is great. And for, I say that whole thing to say this, that, you know, when I was in high school, we kind of, didn't really talk about what may have been going on. We had minimal awareness of it. Whereas now I think, students have a bit more awareness of it, but it's just so many other things that are potential stressors. So if there's an opportunity that's there and the limited capacity and limited time I have with those students or anyone who is going to listen, who I can provide potential feedback to or support to, it's just a great opportunity to help, because it's like, I haven't been through the exact thing, but here's maybe a 5-minute distraction about me saying something stupid. I don't know, but it could be something of benefit, just to kind of lighten the load ultimately.
Yeah, it's it's not easy, working in education, but it is very rewarding. If it's something that you're truly, interested in doing and trying to be impactful, it's I mean, it's amazing. I have so many, stories, but
Gotcha.
I will say that, you know, kids will remind you, what's real and what's not. They can tell, who's trying to, pretend. And, and that's one thing. That's why I love, and I enjoy working with them, because they really do keep you honest. And that's something that I don't just keep that, mentality in when I work with them, just in general, when I apply myself in other areas, especially, with modeling, like there's so many opportunities to not be yourself, right? To try to pander, to whoever. And that's why, I'm very, stay mindful. I stay very aware of, any shift like that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And that's why, in part, when I do this introductory thing, it feels weird sometimes. Like I'll do my intro and then I'll ask the person to introduce themselves, and it's done intentionally. Like, or even when I do like the rapid fire portion, which you'll be getting later, so don't run away. That I find a lot of times you have folks on, it's just talk about these things in this way that gives me the content that I'm looking for. And like, people are three-dimensional. People have much more depth than that. So I don't really care about, yeah. So when you walking on stage, how's your feet feel? I don't care about that, but I'm curious about sort of the thinking that goes into what makes you, what makes you up as a person, what goes into, your philosophies, your thoughts, your identity, and sort of the mental health space, and sort of the in the fashion space and the modeling space. So that's sort of the thinking, and hearing it from you directly and in an authentic way versus, yeah, just give me the things that's clickable, that feels like it's something, social media oriented or whatever. And looking for the real. That's really what it is. So I want to move into styling a little bit. So styling is such a personal and creative process. Now, I'll say this. For a long time, especially when I go down to DC, I have a buddy down there, and me and him joke about being European black dudes. So we try to dress in a certain way when we go to any openings. We're playing a gimmick, but we're both in on the joke, so it's kind of entertaining for us both. But there is a belief, in this sort of personal and creative process, there's a belief that if you look good, you feel good. Whether it's wearing a new outfit or getting a haircut. I know it's a player that plays for the the Celtics, Jason Tatum. There's this clip that goes around. He's just like, man, when I don't get my hair cut, man, I feel like a bum. As soon as I get my hair cut, I'm top five in the league. And I was like, your energy has changed. So you see it on Instagram, right? Like really it's this running thing of they'll show people's glow ups and it's like, you're not ugly, you just are broke. That running bit. So and not necessarily in that's more of a bit, but could you talk a bit about sort of that idea of sort of, I guess, how you feel internally kind of like showing out in what you're presenting, whether it be through how you style yourself, sort of maybe decisions you might do with your hair, what have you. You have hair, so you do that. I don't have hair. I'm just going something else. So just talk about sort of the feelings to the presentation component.
Yeah, so it took me a while before I even understood the difference between personal style and fashion. I mean, a lot of people, get the terms misconstrued, but from what I understand it as, fashion can incorporate, a wide range of things, including, trends, right? But personal style, that's all you. It's how you take those influences, what you see online or what you see at the store, and how you make it work for you. So I will say that, of course, when you're younger and you tend to, I always like what you used to do. I always like to just copy my favorite celebrity. And of course, at the time was, Rihanna. And she's definitely a big somebody when it comes to the fashion industry, really, really big. And of course, one of the most influential. And, I would take a lot of cues from her and really just study. I would literally study the outfits that she was wearing and like break it down and try to find something as similar as possible and just like copy it basically. Right. And, sometimes it would work out, sometimes it wouldn't, but I realized that I was never 100% confident and I couldn't figure out why. And that's when, of course, now as I've gotten older, I realized it's because that wasn't me. You're trying to be somebody else. And of course, it's never going to fit. So once I started developing, my personal style, I really decided, okay, I'm going to do this in a way that allows me to still be me by incorporating, favorite pieces. Like I might see something someone else is wearing, but that I like, but I'll, make it my own. I'll style it differently. That makes sense for me.
Yeah.
So yeah. But in the way I style myself, it changes, right? There's so many trends nowadays. There's, I don't even know, there's so many, but I find that if you have to kind of be careful with, dressing trendy because, it's very easy to get sucked into it. And then by next season, there's a new trend and you no longer wear half of what's in your closet. So, not just as a way to like save my money and my time, I really try to curate my closet in a way that I bring in more timeless pieces that I'll probably still be wearing maybe 10 years from now. I actually have like a leather jacket from like when I was 17. So, and it's definitely well over 10 years. So it's like, the fact that, I have more pieces like that in my closet has made me, has brought a lot of like, a confidence and just, I'm more content now with what I have and how I style myself.
That's great. That's really cool. Like, I find that my weight has fluctuated over the years, and there are times where I used to have that approach. I used to just only wore Ralph Lauren all the time. It's like, yo, rugbies, let's go. They got a new piece, I'm gonna get that. And definitely, I look for specific brands. I even, you talked about jacket that you had when you were 17. It made me think about, this is so corny, and I'm going to embarrass myself in front of you right now, just for context. I used to be a rapper in high school, right? And I had a name, and it has nothing to do with religion, but my name was Nam Mecca. And I used to wear the Mecca clothing line all the time. So that was all I was buying. First job in high school. In high school, yeah, I was buying a new Mecca T-shirt or jeans every 2 weeks, and I was just like, I'd be an influencer. Then, now I'm an influencer, but then I just looked like a Mecca mascot, and it was just ridiculous. And I always find a way to just find a brand that I really like, and then I kind of like stick with it. And you know, in the last few years, it was always like something Carhartt related, but not looking for like the typical sort of thing. You put on a Carhartt beanie and a sweatshirt, and you just look like every hipster strolling the streets. But I would try to find something that was maybe a unique piece that is they did two of these or they did a handful of these, and I'm going to try to freak it. So one thing that I was doing, and I'm looking at one of the pieces right now. I would go to this one brand. It was a shop in Baltimore, Double Dutch, and I would always get like different handkerchiefs from this one brand. So I would always wear like basically like a neckerchief with the Carhartt sweatshirt, and I would just try to like freak it and just try to make it my own. And I was like, this is going to be my signature at least for this year. And that's, I guess, from what I'm trying to reinterpret from what you were saying about style. I think that was my attempt at having my own style.
Yeah, it's definitely, just playing around and just it's a whole process of just experimenting, right? There's no right, there's no wrong, really. And like you said, as your body like changes, it's you're gonna have to adapt your style, right? And yeah, I would definitely say, of course, there are some pieces that you have to let go of, and then there's some that that will stay with you forever, and you find new ways of styling it. That's really one of the best pieces of advice I've been given was instead of going out to the mall to shop in your own closet, because you might have something in there that you can style in a completely different way that makes it feel brand new to you. So I take that.
I love it. I love it. So I got one last real question and then I think 15 rapid fire questions. I am joking. Uh, so sort of the last real question, I want to like kind of bring everything together. So I've been doing this for, as I think about almost 2 decades. So in thinking through it, I've gone through different cycles in my life, who I am as a person, and so on. And this as a creative outlet has always been a part of it. Folks listening at times, they're like, I know Rob. I was like, I don't know if you know me. Or even the podcast that I used to do, my brother would say, he's like, that's you. You need to be more like that. He's like, this whole corporate Rob doesn't really work out. You need to be like podcast Rob. I was like, I use a lot of four-letter words in that podcast. I can't say that in the office, my guy. So for you and your maturation as an adult, moving into sort of, stages like, it's been what, I don't know how many years. I actually should ask, how many years have you been modeling?
So off and on, it's been about 5 years.
So 5 years is a long time. I've been doing this podcast for about 5 years. So from, where you're at, where you started to where you're at now, like how has creativity, played a role in sort of your journey? Because, you start looking at 5 years, we had a global pandemic, we had all of these different shifts in sort of the world around us. So how has creativity been sort of I guess, a tool for maybe coping, a tool for just kind of getting out of your own head? How's that been for you over these, last 5 years?
Well, yeah, I mean, creativity has been, the very thing that's got definitely taken me out of my head, especially when I tend to be an overthinker. So, with clothes, it's very simple. I like what I like and I put it together. So, but in general, I feel like it's not just even for me that I enjoy styling myself. I also like helping other people find their style as well. So being able to use my creativity, not just for me, but to help others as well has been so much fun. And I used to volunteer at a little boutique, when I was in high school, and I used to get, people would pay attention to how I would dress. And, customers will come in and ask, like, where did I find that certain piece, or if I could help them find something. And, especially, it's always usually the tall women too, because they see me and they're like, oh, your pants actually touch the floor. And I'm like, Yeah. Trust me, I understand the struggle, and I would recommend them, you know, certain style of jeans that are more flattering, especially for a woman who's taller and knows what that struggle is like. And I would just, their face when they would try things on, and the level of confidence you see, especially when even it could just be one pair, the right pair of jeans that
Hmm.
can really like make all the difference. And I really get joy out of like helping other people, through that. So,
That's tight. I got a before I moved to these rapid fire ones. I remember getting I went to see Taylor, and I was just like not sure which size jacket I wore because of the whole fluctuations and all, and it wasn't for like a wedding. It wasn't for anything formal. I was getting a suit jacket like altered because it was part of my Halloween costume. I was going this the weekend in the red jacket and I was going to put my own makeup on. I was calling myself the 3 day weekend because I'm a lot taller than him, or the long weekend, whatever you want to call it. And, we were talking and I was like, I haven't been measured in a while. And he's, similar dimensions that I was at the time. And I was like, all right, bro, since you got the tape on me, man, let's talk about jeans real quick. And he was like, what do you want to know? I was like, what jeans should I get? I was like, I got these on. These need to go. And he gave me, as he said, the cheat code. He's like, you should get your jeans from these. He's like, get the athletic cut. He's like, we have a very similar body type. And he's giving me sort of this. I'm not a person that takes the styling advice. I just, as I said before, and I've established, I don't have, but he just threw it out there. And he was just like, yeah, you should just do this. And that stuck with me over the last probably 3 years. So whenever I buy jeans, it's that same sort of setup. And he was 100% right. So it's just something about it. But I had like the biggest grin on my face when he was like, here's the cheat code, bro. I was like, yes, tell me. I'm taking notes, sir. So I would like to move into the rapid fire questions. And I got four of them for you. And as a fellow overthinker, I'll give you the preface. Don't overthink these. Just whatever you got, whatever's the answer. Um, so here's the first one. What's a self-care routine that you've been loving lately?
oh, skincare, whether it's 5 steps or 10 steps, I enjoy it. It's time for, it's me time that, no one else interrupts. And yeah.
All right, we ain't gonna drop that routine. I need to see what we got. What are well, we're recording this fall winterish, so this would be very apt. What three colors have you been enjoying to wear recently?
For fall, I would definitely say teal, maroon, and black.
All right, get out of my closet. That's just my three colors right there. You throw out teal. I was like maroon. I'll say ox blood because I got to be different. I like all three of those colors actually. Now, this one, who's someone whose style has caught your eye in the last year?
Oh, there's this high fashion model. Her name's Anoki. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. But yeah, she's this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful high fashion model. And she was discovered, I believe, like very recently. And her style, is just so. I mean, most of the time I see her wearing, black or white, but she always, I mean, obviously she's tall, so everything she wears just accentuates those long legs, and she always comes off. I would describe her style as a little bit like a mixture between elegant and a little bit of punk or grunge, I guess. Because I've seen her do like different colored wigs and everything, in addition to wearing like ball gowns. So she has a nice balance between these very, two different styles, which I really, I love that when someone can mix it up like that.
I like that duality. That's good.
Mhm.
Okay, here's the last one. This is the one I most recently added. So there's this running thing, and I'm curious about the habits of artists, of guests that I have on this podcast, some of the minutia. So, what are your go-to meals in a given week? Because I want to add, I'm gonna ask a model, yeah. So what are you eating? Like, what do you eat? If you got like 3 meals in a week that you're cooking, what are the 3 meals?
Well, I definitely love to eat. So I would say A lot of what I, know to make is like recipes that were passed down to me by my mom and my grandma. And so my family, my mom's side is Ethiopian, and so a lot of the dishes I know how to make are Ethiopian dishes. So yeah, typically it's either that or if I really want to be, something quick or easy, I'll do like tacos or pasta, like something simple. But yeah.
Okay, you throw out pasta is simple. Okay, I like that. I like how you just slid that out there because you like that the Ethiopian food. That's
I,
the challenge degree of difficulty stuff.
well, I mean, for me, I thought it was when you compare the time it takes to cook Ethiopian food versus pasta, trust me, you'll understand. Like it makes the pasta feel very simple because Ethiopian food, it takes time and a lot of love, a lot of effort goes into it. So
Yeah, you got to put me on. I'm not privy, but I've heard great things.
oh yeah, there's plenty of places, that make really great food, but there's nothing like home cooked food. So
So you made it. You made it off the hot seat. We got all of the rapid fire questions done. We got all the real questions done. So in these final moments, there are two things I would like to do. One, I would like to thank you so much for coming on to this podcast and spending about an hour with me. Gosh, the time flies. And two, I'm going to invite and encourage you to share with the listeners where they can follow you to stay up to date on everything you got going on. So the floor is yours. Social media, website, any of that stuff. The floor is yours.
yeah, thank you for having me. I would say you can find me on both Instagram and TikTok. For Instagram, my user is r.tzera. For TikTok, it's r.tzera. So yeah, you can find me there.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Rahel Negasi for coming onto the podcast and sharing a bit of her story with us. And for Rahel, I am Rob Lee saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.